I woke up to the beeping of machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic. It's funny how hospitals manage to smell the same everywhere, no matter the country, the city, or the weather outside. Lying in that pale, cold room, I felt small in my body but vast in my thoughts. Everything outside those walls, the farm, the land, the people I trusted, was moving without me, or so they thought. Camille, my daughter-in-law, the name alone could have made me laugh if I weren't so angry. She had always had a streak of ambition and cunning, hiding it behind that bright smile and careful politeness. But ambition without patience is a weakness, and greed without caution is a trap. I had seen it in her, even before she tried to sell my farm while I was recovering in this very room. I smiled faintly at the thought. She thought she was smart, clever, untouchable, and she almost was, almost. I closed my eyes and let the memories drift in, sharp and vivid. The farmhouse where I had spent countless hours tending the land, the barn where the red paint peeled just so, the orchard I planted when I was barely older than she was now. Everything was mine. Every tree, every fence, every board held a memory, a story, a weapon if I chose to use it. I reached for my bag and opened the small notebook I kept tucked away. Inside were pieces of her plan, little things she thought no one noticed. Calls to lawyers, hurriedly signed papers, messages sent too quickly, conversations she assumed were private. Everything was documented in my mind and in that notebook, and the biggest secret of all, the mortgage. Camille's parents had borrowed money years ago, money I had quietly acquired. A secret that could undo her entire family if I chose the moment wisely. I wasn't naive. I knew patience would be key. She was impulsive, overconfident, and her own pride would betray her. I would watch silently, calmly. Every misstep would only tighten the net I was weaving. The nurse came in, checking the monitors, adjusting the Roman 4 drip. "How are you feeling today, Alois?" she asked, her voice professional but kind. "Better," I said, smiling faintly. My voice was calm, measured, even gentle. But inside, I was alive with thoughts, planning each small move, anticipating every reaction Camille might have. She didn't know, and that was perfect. As the days passed, I kept a careful watch on everything. Friends, lawyers, the occasional visitor from the farm, they all brought me small updates. Camille, oblivious to my awareness, was making herself comfortable with the idea that she could manipulate events without consequence. She even smiled when she thought no one was watching, arranging her plans, feeling clever. I observed her from a distance, letting her confidence grow. It was intoxicating to watch someone so sure of victory slowly stepping into the snare. Every glance she gave at my farm's documents, every casual mention of the lawyer's visits, every hurried conversation she had, it was all data, all leverage, and I would use it. Nighttime was my favorite. Alone in the quiet of the hospital room, with only the hum of machines as company, I would sit and imagine the farm, my hands running over the wood fences, my fingers brushing the leaves of the orchard. I imagined Camille's face when her plan began to collapse, piece by piece, and I smiled, quietly, patiently, perfectly. On the third day, Camille made her first real move. I heard her over the phone, speaking with the lawyer about listing the farm, discussing potential buyers, mentioning prices and contracts. My heartbeat didn't quicken. I barely breathed. I simply noted every word. Every hesitation, every rushed sentence, every overconfidence in her tone. These were the cracks in her armor. I whispered to myself, "Patience, Alois, let her believe she's winning. Let her believe I'm too weak, too young, too naive." Because that's what they all believed, and that belief would be her downfall. I remembered the first time I had walked those fields, young, full of hope, thinking the world was mine to take, yet learning quickly how fragile life could be. The wind rustling through the orchard, the scent of soil after rain, the soft creak of the barn door, everything was familiar, comforting, grounding. And now it was the weapon Camille would underestimate, because she thought the land was just property, not the heart of someone who had fought for it, bled for it, loved it beyond reason. I planned every confrontation, every move, every subtle manipulation. I would not act too soon, and she would see me coming, adjust, escape. I had to let her believe victory was hers, and then when the moment came, she would learn the truth, that a young woman underestimated, silent and observing, could dismantle her plans piece by piece. The hospital room became my strategy chamber. Each sound, each flicker of light, each shadow outside the window was noted. Every visitor, every comment, every detail became part of the web I was weaving. Camille's arrogance, her ignorance, her need to prove herself, all worked in my favor. I practiced my calm voice, my smiles, my gentle nods, the appearance of a young, fragile woman who could be dismissed. It was all theater, a performance of invisibility, but every gesture, every word was deliberate. By the time the sun set, I felt my body stronger, not fully recovered, but my spirit, my mind, my resolve, those were unbreakable. I could step into the world again, prepared, calculated, ready. Finally, the day of my discharge arrived. The hospital had been both a cage and a vantage point. I stepped outside into the late afternoon sunlight, the breeze carrying the faint scent of the nearby farm. Each step I took felt deliberate, a quiet declaration I was back. I was present and I was watching. Camille had no idea. She believed she had an advantage. She believed she could act freely, and she was wrong. Every misstep she made, every rushed decision, every false sense of confidence would lead her to the moment she realized she had underestimated me. I was young, I was underestimated, I was invisible, and I had been waiting silently for this moment. The farm spread out before me, a sea of green and gold, memories stitched into every fence post, every barn board, every orchard row. Camille had her eyes on the material value, but she had no idea about the control, the secrets, the leverage I held. And when the time came, she would see that I had been watching all along, knowing everything, planning everything, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim what was mine. Because this wasn't just about land. It was about justice, about watching someone who thought they could outsmart me crumble. It was about revenge, and I, underestimated and patient, would see it done. I stepped onto the farm, letting the wind sweep through my hair, the scent of earth filling my lungs. The place looked the same, peaceful, serene, almost innocent, but I knew better. Camille had been weaving her plan while I was away, and I was here to watch every thread unravel quietly, patiently, and with precision. She didn't know I had returned yet. I let her think I was still recovering, weak, fragile. Perfect, her arrogance was already building against me, a dangerous edge she couldn't control. From my vantage point, I observed the way she moved through the barn, checking inventory with a forced smile, her hands brushing over paperwork she thought private. The way she called her friends, whispering about potential buyers and prices, never suspecting that every word, every hesitation, every glimmer of excitement was being noted by me. I smiled softly, patient. Let her feel victory. Let her believe I was powerless. Every time she underestimated me, the web grew tighter. That evening, I walked the orchard. The leaves rustled, the branches swayed, and I traced my fingers along the bark of the trees I had planted myself. Memories of planting them as a girl, learning the patience needed to nurture life, came rushing back. That patience, that knowledge, would now serve me in a different way. Camille's mistakes were small at first, an overenthusiastic comment about the land's value, a hurried note left on the kitchen counter, but I caught them all. I filed them in my mind, in my notebook, as pieces of a puzzle that would soon show her face of defeat. Later that night, I overheard her conversation with her lawyer again. I just think the farm could bring a lot if sold now, she said, unaware I was listening from the shadows. Her tone was a mixture of greed and nervous excitement. She had no idea that I held a secret that could obliterate her plans instantly. The mortgage, I whispered to myself, not yet, wait. Let her believe she's in control. Every move is her undoing. The next morning, I began my subtle interference. A phone call here, a casual remark there, a slight delay in handing over a document. Camille noticed, yes, but attributed it to hospital recovery, miscommunication, youthful mistakes. She didn't suspect that every nudge was intentional, every hesitation orchestrated to make her falter. I walked through the barn, inspecting the stock, my eyes sharp, noting every small change Camille had made to the records. I knew the moment she overextended, made a mistake born from impatience and overconfidence. That moment would be mine, and it would be perfect. Days passed like this, observing, interfering subtly, collecting data. I watched her meet with prospective buyers, smiling with fake charm, agreeing to details I knew were wrong. She thought she had the upper hand, but I knew the truth. I had all the pieces, all the leverage, and I only needed patience. I remembered my own mother teaching me to read people, to notice small tells, small shifts in tone, tiny glances that betrayed intent. Every lesson, every memory, every skill I had acquired as a young woman was now weaponized. Camille was walking blindly into my trap, and she wouldn't know until it was too late. One evening, I intercepted a call from her friend who was discussing a meeting to finalize the sale. I didn't speak, didn't react. I let the words sink in, absorbing every detail. And then I wrote them down in my notebook, every name, every time, every plan meticulously recorded. This information was gold, and it would serve me well. I started leaving subtle reminders for her, little hints that something was off, small delays in approvals, documents misplaced in plain sight. Each small interference was designed to make her anxious, to make her second, guess herself, to create cracks in her confidence. And it worked. I could see her adjusting, frowning, hesitating just enough to make errors. Patience, that word became my mantra. Every time I saw her falter, I smiled silently, knowing the final storm was being constructed brick by brick. The farm itself seemed alive under my gaze. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves, every whistle of the wind reminding me that I belonged here. Camille, despite her scheming, was only a visitor, a pretender, a girl playing at control. She had no idea the depth of what she had challenged. One afternoon, as she moved through the fields, I approached her casually, pretending to be returning from an errand. I offered a smile, a gentle word. "Everything going smoothly?" I asked, masking every ounce of my awareness. Her smile faltered slightly. "Yes. I mean, mostly. Just keeping things moving." I nodded, letting her think I was oblivious. "Good, that's important. You don't want things to go awry." She smiled again, but I could see the expression of doubt. One small seed planted quietly. Later, I would watch it grow. By evening, I had reviewed all the records, double-checked the mortgage details, and mapped out the sequence of actions that would soon bring Camille to her knees. Every time I closed my notebook, every time I tucked it safely away, I felt the thrill of control. I was young, underestimated, and underestimated by everyone who believed they could outmaneuver me. And the best part, they had no idea. As the sun set, I walked the perimeter of the farm. Each fence post, each barn wall, each tree in the orchard whispered memories and warnings. Camille had no right here, not yet, not ever. The land, the life I had built was mine, and soon she would understand just how dangerous it was to try to take what wasn't hers. That night, alone in my room, I sat by the window watching the lights in the farmhouse where Camille slept. I whispered to myself, planning the final moves. Every conversation, every contract, every smile she thought genuine had been catalogued. Every misstep she made was now a stepping stone for my revenge. I was young, underestimated, and quiet, but my patience, intelligence, and the secrets I held were more powerful than she could ever imagine. And soon, very soon, Camille would learn the consequences of underestimating me. The morning sun spilled over the fields, casting long shadows across the farm. Everything looked peaceful, serene, almost like nothing had changed, but I knew better. I had returned not just to walk the land I loved, but to watch, to observe, to orchestrate the unraveling of someone who had dared to challenge me. Camille, with her quick smiles and sharper ambitions, believed she was clever. She believed she could outmaneuver me while I was young, recovering, and seemingly vulnerable. She was wrong. I started my day by walking along the orchard, fingers brushing the leaves of the apple trees I had planted years ago. Each tree had a memory, a story, a lesson. I let the wind carry my thoughts, imagining how Camille's overconfidence would soon betray her. I was patient. Every action I took, every step I made was deliberate. Observation was my first weapon, subtle manipulation my second, and patience. The patience I had honed since childhood was my greatest. I noticed the way she moved through the barn. Her steps were quick, almost anxious. She checked stock, ran her fingers across the ledgers, and muttered numbers under her breath. Her voice was light, airy, casual, but her hands trembled just enough to betray the tension beneath. I smiled. Small cracks in her armor, invisible to everyone but me. Later, I saw her call one of the potential buyers. She laughed too loudly, her tone overbright, masking a flurry of worry. I traced her words, memorized each phrase. By the time she hung up, I had a full picture. The buyer had concerns, Camille had lied to cover mistakes, and now she was stepping into the trap she hadn't even noticed I'd set. The afternoon was hotter than usual. The sun beat down on the barn roof, making the metal creak in long, mournful tones. I moved casually, pretending to check supplies, while in reality I was scrutinizing every little change Camille had made since my return. Ledger entries, order forms, letters left out too long. Each small oversight fed the plan I had been weaving since I first noticed her greed. She passed me carrying a stack of papers, and I greeted her warmly, masking the satisfaction that threatened to slip through. "Busy day?" I asked softly. Her smile faltered. "Yes. I mean mostly, just making sure everything is in order." I nodded, faintly smiling, masking every hint of awareness. "Good. That's important. Sometimes taking a step back prevents mistakes." Her expression betrayed uncertainty, and I noted it carefully. That was the seed I needed. Plant doubt, let it grow, let it blossom. Every small mistake she made, every hurried decision she took, I cataloged, memorized, and waited for the perfect moment to exploit. By evening, the tension on the farm was tangible. Camille moved with forced energy, rushing to organize buyers, checking ledgers, confirming contracts. But each step she took, each hastened decision, was calculated by me, not her. Every delay, every hint of confusion was subtle interference on my part. A slight misplacement of a document here, a casually misdirected call there. I didn't act overtly, but the results were already rippling through her world. I retreated to my room as dusk fell, opening my notebook. The pages were filled with details, each lie Camille had told, each tiny mistake, every anxious whisper I overheard. I traced the mortgage's details in my mind. That secret, waiting like a coiled spring, could devastate her family if revealed at the perfect moment, and I would wait. I would let her confidence peak, let her believe she had won before striking. Night brought a deeper calm. The stars above the farm were bright, sharp against the black sky. I walked through the orchard, my fingers brushing branches, listening to the soft rustle of leaves. The land felt alive, almost knowing. Camille was intruding on something she didn't understand. Every corner of this farm was mine, and every misstep she made only proved she didn't belong here. I overheard a conversation she had with her friend about the sale. Her words were rushed, overconfident, tinged with panic she didn't even realize. The buyer was asking questions she wasn't prepared for. Her smooth facade was cracking, and all I had to do was wait. Patience was everything. I whispered to myself, "Soon you will see, Camille. Soon every misstep, every lie, every overreach will bring you to the edge, and I will watch quietly, deliberately." The following days became a pattern. Observation, subtle interference, noting every miscalculation. Camille began to falter more noticeably each day. She tried to manage buyers, balance ledgers, speak with lawyers, but the pressure I had applied invisibly, subtly, was beginning to show. Each mistake she made was a small triumph for me, a confirmation that patience and intelligence outweighed arrogance and haste. One afternoon, she called me into the office, unaware of how thoroughly I had examined every paper she had touched. She tried to explain a discrepancy, her voice quick, defensive. I nodded calmly, pretending to listen. "I see." I said softly, "Maybe we should review this carefully before confirming anything. Details matter." Her face twitched. I caught the flicker of doubt. Perfect. I let her stew. She didn't know I had already double. Checked every number, every contract, every signature. She didn't know I had documented her lies, her errors, her miscalculations. Later that night, I reviewed everything again. Emails, letters, phone records, casual conversations. All of it cataloged. The network of mistakes she had woven herself was intricate, but now fully visible to me. Every oversight, every misstep, every overconfidence, every rushed decision, all feeding the trap I had prepared. The next morning, I executed a subtle but crucial move. I sent a casual email to the lawyer, posing as a concern for clarity. Nothing overt, nothing aggressive. just a simple note that highlighted a potential issue in the contract. Camille saw it immediately. Panic flickered across her face. The seed had been planted. Throughout the day, her anxiety grew. Small mistakes multiplied. Miscalculations, hastened decisions, and overconfidence collided, creating cracks too wide to ignore. Buyers began noticing discrepancies, and her facade of control began to crumble. By evening, I walked past her casually in the barn. Everything all right? I asked, masking every ounce of satisfaction. She laughed nervously. Yes, just handling a lot of things at once. I smiled faintly, inwardly savoring the control. Every overreach, every misjudgment, every false sense of security was part of her unraveling. She still didn't see me. She still didn't understand that a young, underestimated woman could dismantle her carefully built plans without raising a hand. Night fell. Alone in my room, I whispered to myself, tracing the steps that had led to this moment. Each subtle interference, each observed mistake, each carefully orchestrated delay had brought her closer to the edge. Camille believed she controlled the farm, the sale, the decisions, but she had walked right into the trap of her own making. I recalled every memory of planting these trees, tending the land, learning patience, and observing people. Every lesson, every moment of attention and care was now weaponized. Camille's arrogance, her greed, her overconfidence, they were her undoing, and I, young, underestimated, and unseen, would remain patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Because revenge is not about haste, it's about timing, observation, control, knowing your power while your opponent believes they have it. Camille was nearing her breaking point. Her mistakes were multiplying, her confidence evaporating, her control slipping. And I would be there, silently watching, letting her realize too late the consequences of underestimating Alois. The morning arrived quietly, with mist hovering over the orchard, soft and deceptive, like the calm before a storm. I walked among the trees, each step deliberate, each movement measured. The farm was mine to observe, mine to protect, and soon it would be mine to reclaim completely from Camille's greedy hands. She was awake before me, bustling about, checking contracts, speaking to buyers over the phone, trying to manage details she barely understood. But each attempt she made to assert control only exposed her mistakes. Every rushed decision, every anxious glance, every small lie she uttered fed the network I had been weaving in secret. I paused to watch her from the edge of the barn, my notebook tucked under my arm. Observing her was intoxicating. I saw her confidence wobble slightly when a potential buyer asked for verification of documents she had forged or mismanaged. I made no move. I simply smiled inwardly, patience guiding me. The storm had been quietly set into motion, and she had no idea it was coming. Later, I walked through the fields, pretending to check fences and irrigation lines. Camille passed me, papers in hand, her movements sharper than necessary. I greeted her casually, letting my presence seem incidental. "Busy morning," I said, voice soft, calm, "Yes. Just making sure everything is perfect." She replied, forcing a smile. I nodded gently, masking satisfaction. It's easy to miss things when you rush. Sometimes a little pause makes all the difference. Her lips twitched slightly, a micro, expression betraying unease, perfect. Every word planted doubt, every gesture subtly guided her toward errors. The more she tried to appear in control, the deeper she sank into the trap I had constructed. By noon, the small seeds of panic I had planted were beginning to bloom. A buyer requested a clarification on property boundaries. I had prepared this in advance, subtly hinting at minor discrepancies that didn't exist before, ensuring Camille would respond hastily. She did, and in her haste, she made multiple mistakes, signing forms incorrectly, misquoting prices, contradicting her previous assurances. I watched from a distance as tension spread across her face. Every slip, every stutter, every anxious adjustment of hair or papers was recorded in my mind. I could almost taste the victory simmering quietly in the air. That evening, I approached her in the farmhouse kitchen under the guise of helping. "You seem a little stressed," I said lightly, casually inspecting a ledger she left open. She laughed, nervous. I just want everything to go smoothly. I can't afford mistakes." I smiled softly, pretending to empathize, of course. but sometimes stress makes us blind to what's in front of us. Maybe a short break would help. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted papers. The effect was immediate. A buyer's email pinged on her phone, showing multiple contradictions. Panic began creeping into her controlled facade. Inside, I whispered to myself, "Soon, Camille, soon you'll understand. Every move you made is unraveling because I've been watching all along." Over the next few days, I escalated the plan with meticulous care. Every buyer interaction she attempted, every contract she pushed forward, every phone call she answered was carefully guided to ensure maximum stress and errors. I didn't interfere directly. I let the dominoes fall themselves, but I nudged them subtly, unseen, undetected. By the end of the week, Camille's overconfidence was gone. Her movements were sharp, hesitant, desperate. The network of mistakes she had created, aided unknowingly by my subtle interference, was beginning to collapse completely. Buyers were confused, contracts contradicted, and her credibility was fading fast. One afternoon, I walked into the main office carrying nothing but a notebook and a casual demeanor. "Camille," I said softly, "have you checked these documents carefully? Some numbers seem off." Her face paled slightly. I thought everything was correct. I'll fix it." I nodded calmly. Good attention to detail matters. Sometimes a single oversight can change everything. She didn't notice the tiny smirk playing on my lips. Every word, every gesture was perfectly timed. My patience, my planning, my knowledge of her mistakes, all came together like a silent symphony. That night, I sat alone in my room, reviewing the full extent of the unraveling. Emails, letters, phone calls, contracts, and conversations. Every misstep Camille made had been captured and cataloged. Her confidence was gone, replaced by desperation. And I still hadn't revealed the final secret, the mortgage. The ace up my sleeve that could not only stop her, but dismantle her family's security if ever necessary. I let her struggle for days, believing she might succeed. But now the stage was set for the final act. The farm itself seemed to hum with anticipation. Each tree, each fence post, each patch of soil resonated with history and care. Camille had intruded upon something she didn't understand, and now it was beginning to push back. I whispered to myself, "This is it, the final phase. Every move you make, Camille, leads you here." Over the next 2 days, the collapse accelerated. A buyer called to verify pricing. Another asked for documents she had misplaced. Camille's parents, unaware of my involvement, began questioning her decisions. Each small interaction amplified her stress, forcing errors that could no longer be hidden. I remained calm, young, underestimated, unseen. Observing, recording, letting the natural course of mistakes lead her to her inevitable realization. One afternoon, as she argued over the phone, I entered the room casually. "Camille, maybe we should review everything together. It might save time and prevent misunderstandings." Her eyes widened, panic mixed with stubborn pride. She hesitated, realizing too late she had no choice. The cracks in her armor were wide open, and I stepped in, gently, quietly, guiding her without direct confrontation. By the 4th evening, Camille was exhausted, her confidence completely eroded. Every plan she had devised had been subtly undermined. Buyers questioned her, documents contradicted, her parents doubted her judgment. And I, young and underestimated, had orchestrated it all without lifting a finger openly. I walked the orchard again, the wind rustling the leaves like applause for a performance perfectly executed. I whispered to myself, "Soon Camille will understand that underestimating me was her greatest mistake." Patience, observation, subtle interference. The keys to revenge, and now every element had fallen into place. The slow burn had reached its peak. The storm was ready to strike. The farm was mine to reclaim. Camille had only her mistakes, her arrogance, and my quiet, relentless watchfulness to blame. The morning broke with a crisp chill, the sun just beginning to peek over the horizon. The orchard glistened with dew, each leaf sparkling like a jewel. I walked slowly among the trees, letting my fingers brush against the bark. Every touch a silent reminder of all the years I had nurtured this land. This place was mine. Camille had tried to take it, to manipulate it, to pretend she had any right here. And she had failed, though she didn't yet realize how complete her failure would be. I had spent days observing her, letting her arrogance guide her toward mistakes, carefully orchestrating a cascade of events without ever being noticed. Buyers were confused, contracts contradicted themselves, and her parents had begun questioning her judgment. Everything was poised to fall into place, and now it was time for the final act. Camille emerged from the farmhouse, her movements sharp, her face pale with stress. She didn't notice me watching from the edge of the orchard, notebook in hand, silently cataloging every twitch, every nervous glance. I smiled faintly. Today, she would finally see what it meant to underestimate Alois. I approached casually, pretending to be unaware of the chaos she had created herself. "Good morning," I said softly. She jumped slightly. "Alois, I didn't expect you out here so early." I smiled, a small, almost imperceptible curve of lips. "I like to check the orchard before the heat sets in. Everything seems very busy." Her forced laugh sounded hollow, and I noticed the subtle shake of her hands. Perfect. Every sign of weakness I had patiently nurtured now glimmered openly. The buyers arrived later that morning, each with questions, each with small doubts, each with uncertainty that Camille had failed to notice or address. I walked beside her, offering quiet suggestions, appearing helpful, while my mind catalogued every detail, every misstep, every faltering response. "You might want to double, check these numbers," I said casually, glancing at a ledger. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and frustration. I thought I had everything correct. I'll fix it immediately. I nodded gently, concealing the thrill inside me. She had no idea that her panic had already caused multiple contradictions, minor errors that now formed a web of disaster she could not escape. By afternoon, Camille was unraveling further. Her parents arrived, curious about the progress of the sale. Their questions, though polite, were sharp, probing, and unnerving for someone under pressure. Camille stumbled over her responses, contradictions spilling out in ways she could not control. I stayed calm. Young, underestimated, patient. Each faltering answer, each hesitant gesture, each anxious look fed the slow, deliberate collapse I had designed. I let her struggle, letting the natural consequences of her own choices play out. Finally, I decided it was time to reveal the ultimate leverage, the mortgage. A quiet threat, unseen until now, that could dismantle not just her control over the farm, but the financial security of her family. I approached her parents calmly, notebook in hand, as if I were simply explaining details. "There's something you might want to know," I said softly. "Some of the loans your family relied upon. They've been held quietly, but they're critical to understanding the financial agreements. Mismanagement could have serious consequences." Their faces shifted from curiosity to concern in moments. Camille's jaw dropped, eyes wide in shock. She had never expected this revelation. The buyers, the parents, the farm itself, they all witnessed the unmasking. Camille's carefully crafted narrative crumbled instantly. Every lie, every hasty decision, every false assumption laid bare. And I, young, underestimated, silent, had orchestrated it without anyone realizing. She tried to speak, to explain, to assert control, but the weight of her mistakes pressed too heavily. I watched silently, letting her panic rise, letting the consequences settle, letting the truth fully reveal itself. The farm, my land, my memories, had been defended not with force, but with patience, intelligence, and strategy. Camille had underestimated me, and now she understood the cost. By evening, the chaos had settled into clarity. Camille's arrogance was gone, replaced by humility born from realization. Her parents approached me, a mixture of gratitude and awe in their expressions. You handled this quietly," her father asked. I nodded, smiling softly. "Sometimes the best defense is patience and observation. The truth will reveal itself if you allow it." Camille stood a few feet away, silent, her eyes lowered. I could see the weight of understanding settle on her shoulders. She had underestimated someone young, underestimated someone underestimated Alois. That night, alone in the orchard, I let the wind sweep through my hair. I reflected on every moment, every careful step, every subtle move that had brought this resolution. Revenge was not about rage or haste. It was about timing, observation, patience, and knowing one's own power while remaining unseen. The farm slept under the stars, calm, secure, alive with memories and protection. Camille had learned her lesson the hard way. I had defended what was mine without violence, without confrontation, through strategy, intelligence, and quiet strength. I whispered to the wind, "This is what it means to be underestimated and patient, to know your own strength, to act when the moment is right." And as I walked through the orchard, the soft rustle of leaves echoing like applause, I knew the farm was safe, my legacy intact, and Camille had finally understood the consequences of her ambition. The night ended with quiet triumph. I had orchestrated, observed, manipulated, and waited. Young, underestimated, silent, I had reclaimed what was mine and taught lessons that would not be forgotten. The farm, the land, the memories, they were mine, defended not with force, but with patience and intelligence. And Camille would never forget Eloise.